Do you realize what happens when you make your crisis more important than your life? Think how many people never learn the lesson that's on the other side of a crisis. Every time you start to go into this storm with lightning and thunder and drenching cold rain, you think, whoa, I hate being here. So you hunker down and try to insulate yourself because you are overwhelmed by the crisis you're in. And what if you kept going and suddenly on the other side of crisis, there's a rainbow? We don't get to the rainbow. The rainbow is the enlightenment of what the message in the crisis is. The message is what redeems the crisis. If I learn the lesson of my crisis by embracing it, then I'm not going to repeat it. I'm free from that. Then you're not just free from alcohol, shopping, gambling, drugs, food. You're free from the whole need to make anything an improper choice to cover your anxiety and frustration. Because now you're going to be grounded. You're in the moment. Do you follow what I'm saying here? That's why we got to get through our crisis. And almost always we don't want to feel the crisis. It overwhelms us because we feel insecure about a crisis. We feel threatened that we're going to be considered less. After all, part of what happens in everybody who gains weight or goes broke is shame and embarrassment. The stigma that you're a failure. So who are you going to hang around if you feel that you're a failure and you don't want to be shamed?
People just like you.
Just like you, right. Who should you be hanging around? Just the opposite. We should have programs where if you come in and say, before someone says, I'm an alcoholic, you say, you're not, you're just a human being. Right? You're just a human being who made some inappropriate choices. Now, what is the lesson of your crisis? Where's your rainbow? Explain what you've learned about your crisis so that the next time we're going to face stress and a sense of disempowerment, we won't revert to the same inappropriate choices. That is the kind of group we should be around. Otherwise, I don't drink anymore, but man, I kicked the cat and I punched the wife and I threw the baby in the dishwasher accidentally. And you start hearing the stories of what people feel. There's a rage. Have any of you experienced this? The rage that's going on? And why doesn't anyone acknowledge it? Why is there so little honesty about the fact that so what you gave up something? Big deal. You didn't change. Now, when you give up your anger and you give up your rage and you give up your insecurity and you give up your codependency being around other people just like you, now, then let me know about it. Because 95% of the people who go through this process end up right back where they started. So what was the point of all those meetings of this self-confession? Do you think you redeem yourself the more you confess? There's no redemption in that kind of confession. Be around people who are happy and joyful and loving and making proper choices. That's how you learn in life. I don't want to sit around a group of people who are smoking and drinking and angry and just because they acknowledge something, I say, yeah, brother. No, that's nonsense. And everybody's holding on. I just got to get through this day. Think of that. Think of the baggage when you say to someone, I just got to get through the next 24 hours. What does that do? Come on, what's that do?
Stress, pressure.
Stress and pressure. Why? Because it makes it seem as if it is inevitable that failure is going to be there unless you get through this 24 hours. So immediately you put a barrier in front of you. I am a disease. I am dysfunctional. I am incomplete. So if I say the magic word, if I read the right affirmation, that maybe I can get through this day. But then you start all over again. You have put up. It's like a gauntlet. Okay, I'm going to get beaten up today. I'm going to beat myself up today. And I'm going to keep thinking, God, I'd like a drink. No, you don't. Boom. Yeah, I do. No, you don't. Boom. Just smacking yourself with one hand and smacking yourself with another. So you get through and you go, God, glad it's 7 o'clock we got this meeting. Another day I didn't have a drink. How do you feel? Stressed as hell. I want to hit someone. Do you mind? No, we all want to hit someone. Let's hit each other. Okay. Instead of saying, I'm just a human being, and today is going to be a wonderful day, and I don't have to think about what I'm not going to do because I'm focused on what I am going to do. And what am I going to do? I'm going to make right choices. And how am I going to make right choices? I'm going to understand what happens that allows me to make wrong choices. And that's where you're going to pay attention. I'm going to start living my life like it counted for something. And I'm going to redo my life so that anything that was not focused on is going to be focused. How many times do we give people only what we want them to see and experience of us, and we hide everything that we feel will be judged? Otherwise, if you don't take that approach in our society, then someone reveals themselves to you, then frequently we'll say no. So instead, we give someone a little tiny gold jeweled case, and in it's our life. We open up, oop, there's Mary, this is my life. What's Mary? Mary's pretty, Mary's compassionate, Mary's loving, Mary's caring. Oh, wow. Mary's a mistress, Mary's wonderful in bed. But Mary's also wonderful with children. Mary's Madonna, on one hand, the Virgin, and she is the compassionate mother, and she's the wicked woman. Ooh. And you think, wow. And she'll be there when no one else is. Oh, that solidifies it. And is a great cook. Whoa. And then you say, come on in, Mary. And 3 months later, there's a knock at the door. We got the rest of Mary's luggage. What luggage? What? Oh, you only saw that one little and then suddenly 3 tractor trailers of stuff come in. Mary's neurotic, Mary is psychotic, Mary's a manic depressive. Mary's got herpes. Mary's got 3 affairs going on the side. One with your brother, one with your father, one with your grandfather. Mary actually buys out and says she cooks. And you think, well, I don't want all this. And then the question is, well, look, you're going to start over again, you're just going to accept me. So we get to a point in life where we've committed ourselves to something, thinking it's just a hassle to try all over again. Okay, let's just adapt to what we've got, okay? So it's not the best relationship, so it's not the best job. All right, it's paying my bills. Hey, that's good, right? I can live where I want to live, standard of living. Yeah, but you're producing DDT. Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's not think about that. Right? But it's a multinational corporation where they don't really have human beings running it. They have kind of bottom line. There's a guy comes in every day called, I'm the bottom line. He was actually born in a ledger. And so everything's a bottom line. It's impersonal, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger's character as his cyborg. That's how we begin to live when we adapt. Every time you adapt to a negative, you've imbalanced your life. Think of how many times we've compromised out of fear of what we would lose if we did not adapt. So we live in LA, right? Where no one has the same phone number for more than 28 seconds. And everybody's in Robert Redford's next film. And you got pollution that is terrible. And road rage. And such a lack of aesthetics. And yet because there's something there, you're willing to let all that be in balance. But it's not in balance, it's a negative. And then you compromise. How many times in life have we made compromises because we didn't feel there was anything else we could do? You're never better off because of those compromises. You're always worse off because of those compromises. They create imbalance, and the imbalance creates conflict. And then that conflict creates crisis. So at some point you wake up one day and you've got emphysema. Or you realize you just wasted 4 hours a day commuting everywhere. And you still don't feel good inside. Then what was the good of having one thing that you could accept and adapting to all the other things that you accepted because you couldn't change them? That's the negative of when you adapt. Instead of adapting to problems, transform them. Instead of adapting to a crisis, transform your crisis. It's only when we transform our crisis that we grow. And it's only when we grow through transformation that we understand the message of our crisis. Trouble is, we've been told we have to adapt, and we do. Do you realize how many things we do to adapt? What are some common adaptations that we do in our society? What?
Living.
How do we adapt to our living?
Settle for.
We settle for whatever it is that we can deal with in the moment, as if there's no other place that we could be. We are suspicious of anyone who manifests something that we have refused to acknowledge we're capable of. But again, go back to what I said. You can't give what you don't have. And if we feel that we don't have the tools to feel open and flexible and dynamic, we're just going to adapt to everything. Now, you're going to look at this and realize, how much does it cost to have that farm out there? You want to know something? You could buy 10 of those farms, what you could just a normal little old apartment on the Upper West Side. I know people living in Harlem paying more monthly rent than people living in beautiful Sedona. Yeah. And we don't realize that there's a whole world, but we've adapted. And then we adapt everything, we try to justify everything by rationalizing. Rationalizations become the first clue that you're adapting instead of transforming your crisis. Almost everything in our life is an illusion. We live by illusions. We just don't recognize the illusion. When I counsel celebrities, I see them without the makeup. I see them unglamorized. I see them without digitally corrected eyelids, where one is down, a drooping eye. And you think, wow, and they're getting all that money, and they're famous. If people only saw them the way they are. It's the illusion. We don't want to see them like that. There was once a very famous American classic actor, great English actor, and I was counseling him for his alcoholism. And I had him up at my farm upstate New York, and he was just sitting there on a bale of hay with me in a barn, and it was a summer afternoon, and it was raining out, and all the animals didn't like the rain. Goats and sheep don't like the rain. They were inside, and the little pony was inside, and we had a heifer inside, and they were laying right beside us. We were on a bale of hay, and he's just sitting back, and he's thinking, wow, Gary, this is a life. This is a life. I said, why don't you take this life back home with you? I can't do that. Why can't you do that? He said, well, you have to understand. He said, people will not admit this, but everyone I know, he was talking about himself, who's a celebrity, they want to hang around other celebrities, not because they're particularly brilliant or likable, or you have anything that much in common with them, but because they're very insecure that the world, regular people, would recognize that they're not so much different from each other. And people don't want to see me mumble in my conversation, walk through the day like anyone else, slightly confused and on automatic. He said, but my whole day is very, very, very much structured like anyone else. The difference is that I get on a stage and I say words that someone else wrote. I'm made to look a certain way by directors, cinematographers. He said, but at the end of the day, when all that's gone and the people don't see me, I'm just as no different than they are. So would they want to come and see me if they realized how just regular I am, that I couldn't carry on a more articulated conversation than they could? No, we don't want our heroes to be like us. We want people that we feel are models to be better than us. Why? We have so little appreciation for the uniqueness of our being that we're always making someone else seem better. Well, that's an illusion. The illusion is our schools are there to really teach the kids in ways that will prepare them for the world when they live. And you think, what's wrong with this scenario? Wow, that's not the world I live in. Most of the institutions are dysfunctional, and people accept them. Most people go through lives that are artificial until one day they wake up and realize, my God, I haven't been living an authentic life. How can you be happy? How can you be whole? How can you be balanced if you're not authentic? At some point, we must be authentic with who we are, without looking in a mirror and being angry because we've gotten old, or we've gotten wrinkled, or we've gotten fat, or we've got AIDS, or we've got alcohol eating our liver up. We have to be authentic. Who am I? Because if I start with who I am, at least I know what I can do with who I am. Because if I can't get to the point where I know my authentic self, I'm going to continue to live a non-authentic life. And my non-authentic life means I can master something that is not real to me. And how many people work jobs that are brilliant at what they do and yet are dysfunctional in the choices they make? How can you have a person be so good at this and so absolutely wrong at this? Look at the disparity between what people achieve and what they represent as human beings. How could a person be one of the wealthiest people in the world and be a mean, angry person to everyone else around them? Then what good is that money? The person who dies with not a nickel in their pocket, but a wonderful heart and a loving temperament will be remembered. And that legacy will live far beyond the person who died with all the money, but nobody liked. One had an authentic existence, the other didn't. It doesn't mean that money creates disharmony. It does not. It's why we need something. If you need love, you'll never find it. If you need health, you're not going to get it. Whatever you need, you've made more important than who you are. So you've made your needs what's authentic, and you've left yourself out of it. You're in the bleacher, and your needs or your dysfunction is out on the playing field. So you're watching your dysfunctional self each day go through routines and habits and feelings and emotions as if it were real. You've made yourself unreal because you've made yourself incapable of correcting what you're doing out here. You can't have an artificial self go through life and find any fulfillment because the artificial never connects. There's no authenticity in what it connects with. It's only when you connect with what's authentic that you can identify the authenticity of your own existence. Only through an authentic connection can you change. Because the first tool you need is to identify what is authentic in you. Because anything that's authentic is what balances, but everything that's not authentic imbalances. Your frustration, your anger, your disappointments will always come through what is not authentic. How many times have we seen people who've been so successful and yet so self-destructive, self-sabotaging? Right? And you think, why? Why? You have so much. Why blow it? What did they have? They didn't have that sense of self. They weren't present for their own life. They were a shadow trying to catch themselves. And they lived in that cold, dark world that emanates depression and hopelessness. They disguise it so they can seem functional. They're never happy or complete. It's easy when you're a shadow of who you should be to make inappropriate choices and end up in crisis. What in our life is distorted? Because what's distorted is where you're creating the imbalance. Look at anything that's distorted. Is your health distorted? Are your thoughts distorted? Anything that's distorted must be faced and corrected. Take the distortion out. And part of the way you take the distortion out of life is you correct the image and the illusion of what you thought should be. How many times do we give ourselves an illusion of what happiness should be, or a great job should be, or a relationship should be, but the reality is not going to be that. And then we get disappointed. And then we give up. Okay, if it can't be perfect, I don't want it. And then we watch television or go to the movies or read novels thinking that perfection is over there. What I didn't achieve, someone else did. That's why we're so enamored by other people's lives and so disillusioned by our own. We feel there's so little because we have grown smaller in our life and our choices. The older you get, the fewer choices. And then we compartmentalize. If I'm a woman, less choices. If I'm colored, less choices. If I'm uneducated, less choices. If I don't have money, less choices. Don't have friends, less choices. If I'm getting older, less choices. If I'm diseased, less choices. If I'm overweight, less choices. And if I have addictive behavior, less choices. And then one day we wake up and our lives are tiny little microcosms of what they should be. And yet, in that same human being, you have more potential to live a bigger life. Your life should be lived in a larger way. Let yourself out. Take the corsets off. We're walking around overly constricted by dogmas, rituals, creeds, rules. Everyone's telling us how to live, what to think, what to do. And we live like this. Freedom expands. Fear constricts. Love opens us up. Hatred pulls us down. without even being aware of it. We live constricted, limited lives and think because we attach with something intellectually, we are what we attach to. You are not. That's just an attachment. How do you respond when an event forces you to interrupt your natural behavior? You're doing something, and now something changes it. How do you react more often than not? Anger, fear, depression, anxiety? Why? In that moment that something interrupts your normal behavior, you're ill prepared of how to cope with it. So we plunge ourselves into the few things we've been allowed to do. We cry, we feel depressed, we get anxious, we take tranquilizers, we numb our feelings, alcohol, various drugs. We overeat, we feel saddened, we feel disappointed. Inappropriate choices. If anything, when something disrupts our normal behavior, we should say, it may not feel good. I may not like what's happened, but the fact that something has got my attention is important, because how often do we not allow ourselves to pay attention? How many parents in this room? Okay? How many times have you asked your kids to do something simple, and they didn't do it? They heard you. Many times, right? Yeah? And then you ask them again. But this time you have to raise your voice a little bit, right? And about the 5th time you finally say, take the damn stuff out. And what are you yelling for? As if the only time they're going to pay attention to you is when you yell. Now, did they not hear you? Or did they hear you and choose not to honor you? So what the real issue is, then those children are not honoring you. Now, they could tell you why they're not going to want to honor you, but the fact is they're not honoring you. So what I want to know is, what do we have to do when routines change? We have to be present for them and stay neutral. When a crisis happens, stay neutral. Let it be what it is and look at it for what has changed. Every change is a crisis, but it's also, according to the Chinese, an opportunity. Look for the crisis and look for the opportunity and say, how do I want to respond to this? I know people that the only time they got smart about their finances is when they were broke. Right? I know people the only time they realize what they shouldn't be doing with their sex life is when they got someone pregnant or they got diseased. Until that time, you couldn't communicate with them because they had like raging hormones, a brain of its own. I'm going this direction. Don't think that way, and they do. Every time we honor an illusion, we dishonor our true self, which in turn creates such an imbalance that radical corrections become necessary. There was a time when women weren't allowed to vote because we were told that women weren't emotionally stable enough to be responsible or held in a responsible position. And even though women could have, going on strike, stopped doing domestic activities, stopped sex, they didn't. It took decades before finally, through the efforts of a small and really outspoken group of women, that women joined up and they got the right to vote. Think of all the illusions that we live with, including the illusions that you are incapable, insufficient, you're not enough to be enough in your own life. Stop believing in illusion. Institutions encase you in illusion, that they will take care of you. They have all the truths. Well, which institution has made it a better world because they were all correct? Which one? If all the religions were right, why do we still have so much hatred and inhumane treatment of one to another in the world? If governments were right, why is it that we are disproportionately taxed and that we do not have the comfort and safety of who we are? Our educational institutions have also this illusion. Just everywhere we live, we're living with illusion that is really not true. I would rather take away all of the illusions and see what I'm dealing with. Because when you take away all your illusions and all you're left with is the bare bone truth, that's where you begin your journey. I may not like the process or the time or commitment to put my act together, but I do know this: when I'm brutally honest and I allow no lies, no deceptions about who I am, what I'm capable of, what I want to be, what I want to feel, what I can share, what I can give, what I can receive, when I start with that, then at least the foundation of my life is solid. Whatever I build upon that foundation of self can only help myself evolve. I can evolve in unlimited ways when I start off with a foundation that's based on truth. I can never evolve when I start off on a foundation that's based upon illusion. So I have to first get rid of the illusion of who I am and become real with who I am. And my reality shouldn't be based upon the mistakes I've made, because my mistakes are not who I am. The mistake is what happens when you live by an illusion of who you think you are, and therefore ill-prepared to deal with all the crises and challenges that come into our lives. I've been given the wrong tools. So if I'm given a basketball to play golf with and I don't do well, I shouldn't beat up on myself and feel depressed and angry because I've got the wrong tools. The poor child that doesn't get the right tools is certainly going to make inappropriate choices in life. So we grow up one day realizing that we're just an extension of all the mistakes that have occurred. So forgive that. Forgive the people, forgive the institutions, forgive everything in your life that's been a part of the illusion that you've become. And look at what you are in reality. Even if no one else will accept you for who you are, as long as you accept you for who you are, that's all you need. Because in the end, you're born alone, you're going to die alone. Everyone else you meet throughout your life, it's hopeful that they'll accept you as you are. And if they don't argue, don't convince, don't try to prove yourself to other people. It'll never work. And part of our frustration is trying to prove to people we deserve their attention, their love, their kindness, their respect. And that's when you start compromising. And that's when you start adapting. How many times have you done things for other people just to get them to like you, to respect you? Instead of saying, this is who I am. Like me and respect me because I know who I am, I'm honoring myself, and I honor everyone in the process. When we do that, there's no more conflict, and there's balance. Where there's balance, there's harmony. And where there's harmony, there is bliss. And in bliss, there's no need to sublimate. And when you're not sublimating, then there's no alcoholism, there's no drug addiction, there's no gambling, there's none of the things that we're now doing, stating these are diseases. They're not diseases. How they manifest in the body frequently can be a disease, but that's not the cause. Thank you very much.